In Ecuador, you eat rice every single day. Every day. I think I didn't have rice 2 times on my mission. 2 days out of a year and a half, I didn't eat rice. The members fed us every day for lunch, which was great, except for P-Day. We would make our own stuff. So they were so great. There was one family who would feed us every Tuesday, every Wednesday. And the food, I really liked the food. A lot of people get sick of rice, but I learned to love it more. And we would eat rice with chicken of all different kinds. I mean, they had this dish with like cut up chicken pieces and like vegetables all mixed in rice. It was called Arroz Con Pollo, and it was really good. They would usually eat it with fried plantains that were mature. I don't really know how to say it in English, but they ate a lot of bananas down there. They always have soup, which I don't understand because it's like 95 degrees every day. But we'd always eat soup. We would always have rice. And my favorite dish was just rice with fried meat. I don't know. It's like a steak, but they would cut it really, really thin. And so they would fry that up, and then they had like beans or lentils on the side. And that was definitely my favorite dish. And also they would have these things called patacones that they would make out of green plantain, and they would just fry it up and smash it, and it was so good. And so anything with rice that you can think of, they would eat it. They would eat spaghetti on rice. I had that 3 times in 1 week once. They would eat egg on rice, just like a fried egg on rice. They always had little salads with cooked vegetables that they would mix in with mayonnaise, like potato and corn and whatever with mayonnaise. In my mission, we couldn't eat lettuce or any raw vegetable, so that kind of limited a lot of the salads that they would eat. They would eat a lot of tuna also. The craziest thing that I ate probably would be guinea pig. It's called cuy down there, and it was good, but it was just weird knowing what it was. And also when I was in one area, we ate iguana. The members caught it right there, and they cut it up and cooked it, and it tasted good. I mean, I don't really know what to relate it to except chicken. It didn't really taste like chicken, but but it was good. But I loved the food down there, and they would make natural juices that were the best. They're so good. A lot of Coke. We drink a lot of Coke too. There's a lady that lives on the other side of University Avenue who sells Ecuadorian food. I've never been, but I heard that it's good. And they have a page on Facebook, and I liked it, so I want to go sometime.
Traditional Ecuadorian foods would include something called seco de pollo, which means dry chicken. But in Ecuador, it's actually wet. It's very moist chicken with like tomatoes and some onions and peppers and stuff like that. They just kind of boil it all together in a saucepan and then just serve it with a plate of rice. But my favorite food, that is one of the common foods there, seco de pollo. But what is one of my favorite foods is churrasco and ceviche. So churrasco is a plate where they have a lot of rice and then steak strips and then French fries, and then a little bit of like another side of a meat, such as like ham or turkey. And then they kind of cover it with like lettuce and tomato. It's really good. It's like one of my favorite ones. It's very filling. It's very good. I don't think it's as healthy as most foods, but it's really, really tasty. And then ceviche is also another really good food. It's seafood where they take shrimp or fish and they kind of marinate it with like a lemon sauce, and they cook it, and then they put it in a juice of lemon and a little bit of tomato with onion. And then they have these banana chips called chifles, which are fried bananas, and they kind of serve it a bowl of ceviche, which is cold, a little bit of chifles, and then rice again. Ecuador has a lot of rice. And Everybody eats a ton of rice there. Whenever you go somewhere to eat, you'll see mountains of rice that people will just be eating just because it's very filling, it's cheap, and it'll give people the adequate amount of energy so that they can go on to their work. And so those are my favorite foods. And also there's another one called encebollado. It's kind of like ceviche, but it's hot. So people eat encebollado in the mornings usually. And those are the main kind of foods in Ecuador. You're also going to see plantains, which are fried, and they put a little bit of sugar on them to sweeten them a little bit, and they serve those as well. And something called bolones de verde, which are basically bananas, and they mash them into a ball, and then they fry them and put cheese in them. And they'll serve those with eggs in the morning for breakfast. Those are really good too. They are fried, but they're really good. And it just kind of shows you how people in Ecuador really use every type of food to their advantage. They take the banana, they can slice it to do the fried banana peels, or they can just make the bolones de verde and put it in a ball. So they just kind of do a lot of really unique things with food that are really good.
I expected the food to be really weird, just because all these mission stories of people, I ate this and it was super strange. I didn't find that the food was very gross, but it was never very good. Mostly what you're eating is a big pile of rice. They'll have your plate and it's just a big mountain of rice, and then they'll put something on top. So it'll be maybe a little bit of chicken and some sauce or some beef. In my mission, I don't know if it was just my mission or the whole region, but we weren't allowed to have any pork. So that wasn't there. And we also weren't allowed to have any vegetables unless they were cooked, which was a bummer. I wouldn't have thought that was a bummer, but it was. But yeah, that's mostly what the food is. It's just chicken and rice every day, every meal. The way they had it set up there was we'd have lunch with the members. So breakfast was whatever that you had in your house in the morning, and dinner was pretty much non-existent. I rarely had dinner, unless maybe one of the people you're teaching, one of the investigators, would invite you to eat something. Dinner pretty much just never happened. But lunch is huge, and it takes a little bit getting used to that, because in the afternoon it's hot, you're walking around, and then you eat this big massive meal, and you're supposed to go to work right after that, but you really just want to take a nap. So maybe to get adjusting to that was a struggle. But the food, it wasn't bad. But yeah, it got old so fast because it was the same thing every day. The one cool thing that I like was they eat a lot of plantain. That's like a staple. A lot of times they'll have maybe strips that they fry, and they'll have it on the side, or they'll like make it into chips. Those are good. I like those. And then there is a lot of seafood. If you're on the coast, there's a lot of seafood, which was a bonus. There's lots of shrimp, and maybe some fish that you'll eat. But mostly it was chicken. Let's see, the juices were really good, but you gotta be careful because a lot of times they would get you sick. Because the water's so bad, if they don't use like a purified water from a bottle, pretty good chances that it gets you sick. But there's some really good juices. They have a ton of passion fruit down there, which is so good. I didn't necessarily know what it was before I left because I'd seen the flavor and stuff, but they don't sell it here. Apparently it's illegal because in the seeds there's a little bit of a drug, but they don't necessarily eat that there. But that was amazing. And there's bananas everywhere. They grow bananas. There's sometimes you'll be on a bus and for like an hour all you see is like banana plantations. Just everywhere. So there's tons of fruits, mangoes. You'll see those a lot too. But the food typically is just rice and chicken. Oh, and soup. They give you soup every time, even though it's like 90 degrees and you're eating outside, and they give you this hot soup. It's weird, but those were good. It was just weird.
What you'll be eating in Ecuador is rice. I hope you love rice because you'll eat it every single day, literally every single day. There'll be a few days maybe where you don't eat it, but every day you will eat rice. And when you get home, you'll actually miss the rice, which will surprise you because you didn't think you were ever going to miss rice again. But rice fills you up really well. You eat like a big meal at lunch, and that's darn near it. They have really tiny breakfasts and really tiny dinners. It's mostly just a giant meal of rice at lunch. With the rice, they have this thing called menestra, which is lentils. And for me, it was just a type of lentils that had absolutely no flavor. And they say that it's there to wet the rice. So just kind of put on the rice. And it does wet the rice, but it doesn't do anything else. It just didn't have much flavor. But it's healthy, and it's hard to get sick on that. So that's nice. And usually you'll have chicken. Chicken that maybe died from starvation. But yeah, the chicken for me was the best part of the meal. You just got to roll it in the rice and flavor up your rice, and it was nice. But that's the most typical meal in Guayaquil and most of Ecuador is chicken, rice, and menestra, or lentils. In Ecuador, in Guayaquil especially, on Saturdays for some reason, they all have this thing called encebollado. They all go to, it's kind of a soup, and it means kind of, the name kind of implies like onions, so it has a lot of onions in it, and it's just kind of this soup that they eat with fried plantain chips, and it's a breakfast food for them. And you'll have that. A lot of missionaries like that. I didn't particularly like it when I was there, but a lot of missionaries love it. The thing that I loved the most was called ceviche, and that's really hard to describe. You should probably go look it up because it's kind of a soupy dish, but it's not a soup, it's cold, and it's kind of a raw seafood type dish. My favorite was called ceviche mixto, and that had octopus, squid, shrimp, fish, like all of it in it, and I thought it was delicious because the seafood there is really fresh, so it's really tasty seafood. And turns out octopus and squid are also really tasty. I'd never had them before, but they are very, very tasty. And you also eat that with the plantain chips or popcorn, and you can put it over rice, and it's very tasty. I loved that. But you'll mostly be eating just kind of simple meals. Outside of Guayaquil, you tend to eat more fish instead of chicken, which can be nice to shake things up. But that's essentially what you'll be eating every day, is just kind of a variant of rice, chicken, and lentils. My favorite juice is pineapple juice. What you do is you get pineapple and you blend it up and you pour it in, mix it with some, don't even mix it with some water. You can put in some extract of vanilla and sugar. And that's the best juice I've ever had in my entire life. And it's absolutely amazing. They also have this thing called tomate de árbol, like tree tomatoes. And that kind of grows on you. Like, you start drinking it and it's not very good. But then later in your mission, you'll like have some at the dinner table and you'll be like, yes, this is delicious, and you'll just guzzle it down. They also have this thing called Pony Malta, which is kind of it's a malt drink. It's made by the beer company there. And it's non-alcoholic, but supposedly it tastes kind of like beer, but better. And I recommend drinking that because it's gross, but it's also like you find yourself craving it later on the more you have it. So it's kind of I don't know. It's a very satisfactory drink. Like, I remember one time we had a service project, and then it's like, let's go get some Pony Malta. Yeah, and we drank it. And, it's good stuff. Except it's really, So it's just a lot of fun, different things to try down there.
Some of the cool facts about Ecuador, one of my favorite things is the history that goes along with it. There's a people that are known as the Otavalan Indians that live in Ecuador. They're really the closest thing that I've ever seen as far as an indigenous group goes. And they would have their ceremonial clothing that they would wear, even to church. They would just wear white slacks, a white shirt. Sometimes they'd wear a hat, which is part of their ceremonial clothing. And it was just part of their tradition and culture. And that was a really neat experience to see what types of things they did as members of the church, but also things that they did to keep in line with their family traditions, such as long braids. Even the men would wear their hair down, and they weren't supposed to cut it. It was part of their tradition to keep it long and braided. So that was interesting. Definitely an eye-opening experience when I arrived to an area called Iluman and saw mostly just pure people that looked like Indians. And that was a really neat experience to learn about them and some of the things that that they practiced and how they became members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. One of the things that I love about Spanish culture in particular is how the people interact with you on a daily basis. Most of the people are just always warm and loving, very welcoming. I remember a specific area in my mission in the coast. It was an area called Esmeraldas, and I remember almost every house that we went to, Some of the people would let us in, and maybe they didn't have a lot of interest in our message, but they definitely had an interest in sharing their food with us. And that was awesome to be able to learn from them, their culture, and obviously share the great food that they would make. South American food is some of the best that exists in the world. Most people just think it's rice and beans, which that is a lot of what it is in South America, but it is some of the best rice and beans that exists in the world. And especially the rice. I don't know what it was or what they put in it, but the rice just tasted completely different than any other rice I'd ever tasted. And even though I ate rice every single day on my mission, I learned to love it, and it filled me. So that was the most important. The craziest food that I ate was probably cow tongue. That was definitely a unique experience, and to add to that, the people didn't tell me what I was eating beforehand, so definitely came as a shock to me when I learned that it was cow tongue. Another small story was we were eating food with a family of members, and out of their refrigerator they pulled out a lamb's head and put it on the kitchen table. And although I didn't try the lamb, it definitely was intimidating to look at it as I was eating the other foods that they had prepared, not knowing exactly what the meat was that I was trying that day.
It's different, but I love it. If you serve in Ecuador, you'll eat rice every single day. And not just a little pile of rice, a whole mountain of rice. You eat with the members in the Guayaquil North Mission. You eat lunch every day with the members, and they really like to feed their missionaries. They like to keep their missionaries very well fed. In addition to rice, it depends a lot on the area. If you're in an area out in the country, you'll get a lot of fried bananas, a lot of chicken, a lot of lentils. They have a lentil thing called menestra, where they put like cheese and lard in. It's actually really, really good. Those are like the typical dishes, the typical things that you'll get. And then obviously, there's the weird stuff. They make soup with cow intestines, and there's a really, really popular dish with cow stomach called guatita, with a really good peanut sauce. And it's a little off-putting the first time you eat it, but it's really common there. So, the third or fourth times you eat it, it actually starts getting good. To me anyway. There's some missionaries that never really liked it. A lot of fried food. If you're on the coast, a lot of fried fish, a lot of fried chicken, and the bread is amazing. Anywhere you go in Ecuador, whether you're in the city or if you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's always a little bakery on the corner. And every morning they come out with fresh rolls and fresh chocolate bread that is just to die for. It's better than anything I've ever tasted in the United States. So that's a pretty solid breakfast, pretty solid dinner, and you always eat lunch with the members.
To buy food, you go to stores called comisariatos, and they're markets where they sell just foods, just like your normal supermarket in Ecuador. And they have both food that are native in Ecuador and also food that have been exported or imported from the United States. So, for example, I saw things like Jiffy peanut butter there, whereas here it may be $3, over there it's about $6. So it's obviously more expensive, the things you get that are American versus the things you can get that are from Ecuador. But I really couldn't find any difference in the stores, rather than they do have like, I guess, for example, milk. They have milk in bags there rather than gallon jugs in the United States. So that was kind of interesting. I would always see that they just have it in the little bag, and then you just use your scissors to cut the bag, and then you just pour your milk and kind of roll the bag back up and then put it in your fridge. So those are kind of unique things that Ecuador also has. They also have a lot of powder milk, another kind of milk box that's called avena, which is an oatmeal drink. Avena is really good. It's kind of, they take oatmeal, they put it with milk, they put sugar, and then they boil it all together, and then they cool it, and then that's kind of your standard milk drink that they have in Ecuador. So that's kind of cool too. And everything else is pretty standard. They use American money in Ecuador. So if anybody were to be traveling there, they could just bring $10, and $10 would be $10 in Ecuador as well. But it goes a lot farther than it would in the United States. If you need to go get a taxi from city to city, maybe it'd be, 10 miles. Maybe in the United States it'd cost you $40. In Ecuador it'd cost you maybe like 15. So it's kind of more convenient that way as well.
The food,
be forewarned, you will eat a lot of plain white rice, like plain white rice. I never thought I would eat so much rice in my life, but I did. You get a lot of white rice. It's like the main thing. And then you get some sort of meat, typically, a type of salad. So just be prepared for that, and be prepared to be very, very full after you're done eating lunch, because you get fed a lot. And so, and especially rice is very filling, so it fills you up pretty quick. Don't hesitate to talk with the members, though, even in regards to, especially if you have food restrictions. I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I don't like this, so don't give it to me. I do not recommend doing that. However, if there's certain things you can't eat because of dietary needs, don't hesitate to tell them, because they're wanting to serve you too, and they're going out of their way to give you food. And if they're aware, then they can work with you. I had a companion who couldn't really eat rice, and so she had to have that conversation with all the sisters when they fed us. And so usually she would sometimes they'd give her bread instead of rice to kind of balance out not having that staple. Or I had a companion, for example, who she could eat rice. Rice wasn't a problem, but she couldn't eat huge amounts of rice. And so she was able to talk to the sisters and just ask them if they could give her less rice, and they were fine with that too. And be excited for all the fruit juices, because that's probably, outside of people, when I get asked what do I miss the most about Ecuador, besides the many people that I came in contact with, obviously, my first answer is always the fruit and the juice. They eat lots of fruit, and you almost always have fresh juice with your meals. Be prepared to eat lots of bananas. That's a big one. And if you've never realized that there's more than 2 types of bananas, then you are in for an eye-opening experience. They're just in Ecuador by itself, there's probably at least 15 types of bananas. They all have different names. They all get used in different ways. My all-time favorite banana most definitely is the red banana, and it is legitimately red. And it has a different taste. It's sweeter. I can't really describe it, but that was one of my favorite fruit from down there, in addition to many other kinds of fruit. And take advantage of them. There's a lot of crazy fruit, so I would recommend documenting the crazy fruit that you eat. I have pictures of some of the fruit because it's not stuff you can get here. And so I like to show my family and be like, this is what I ate. And they all look at me like I'm crazy, but it was good. During Easter, so the week of Easter, the food is a little special. How do I describe this? Depending on where you are, you may or may not get meat that week. You might get a lot of fish, so just be prepared. And when you get fish in Ecuador, you get the entire fish. Sometimes you're lucky and they gut them, but more often than not, they don't get gutted and they don't really get cleaned. They get rolled in flour and they get fried. And so they'll hand you a plate and it's the entire fish and the eye, and they're looking at you, and it's kind of creepy. But it's actually really good. It's just different. And then on Easter, they have a special soup that they make, and it's called fanesca. I only had it once while I was there. But it's a soup made from, it's all grains. And so there's 11 different grains, I think, that are in this soup. And so it's a very, very heavy and thick soup. And they quite often put smoked fish in it too. So just be forewarned. It's really good though. I thought it was really good. Some people don't think it's good, but I thought it was good. Just know that it's really heavy and hopefully you don't get it multiple times during the week of Easter because it will do damage to you. That's probably what I'd have to say in regards to food.
With regards to eating food, it's rice. It's rice every day. It is the absolute staple of Ecuadorian food, as far as I know. I mean, maybe in Quito or something else, there might be some differences there, but in the city of Guayaquil and Zamora and Cuenca, the areas that I served, it was rice everywhere. And sometimes you had some chicken on top, or seco de pollo, there's also some other really cool things that we would have there, like yuca was something cool that we got to eat. Oh, I love the juice. I'm a big fan of juice, right? And they would always offer you juice, and that was way better to me than just water or lemonade. Well, lemonade is technically juice, but I just felt like all the cool different. Oh, for instance, they made watermelon juice. I don't think I've ever had that in America before going to Ecuador. I've since sought out watermelon juice like twice before since I returned, because I think, why don't we have watermelon juice? And we got lemonade, orange juice, etc., but we don't have watermelon juice. Everyone loves, well, a lot of people love watermelon, right? So that was a wonderful thing to get to participate in when you got offered, some food, and you got a wonderful drink out of it as well. And then a crazy food that I once tried. Personally, it wasn't my favorite, but I wanted to try it, was chicken feet. Now, there's not a lot of actual meat on a chicken foot, but, I wanted to try it out, and, it was a little different. It was a little chewy and stuff, and, you're like, it's kind of like a drumstick with a lot less meat on it, because you got to work at it to get a little bit off of it. So that was kind of interesting. One thing that was kind of unfortunate, just being Americans and being missionaries, there were certain rules, of course, of things that we could not eat. And I know it was really depressing for me because I love eating lettuce, like a nice good salad, a green salad, and you couldn't eat lettuce down there. So that was kind of sad. Oh, and also strawberries and things like that, where strawberries, like any type of berries, really. And other things, I guess, that were on field, they're grown, where like, I guess, the insects or pesticides or whatever kind of bacteria could get inside of crevices, like a strawberry has those crevices. We weren't allowed to eat those because we would all get sick, apparently. And getting sick was pretty often anyway. So, I mean, I would say probably, yeah, so I don't know how to say this politely, but they call diarrhea la bicicleta or la bici, which just means the bicycle or the bike. And I don't know why they would call it that, or maybe it's because we call it the runs. I don't know why they would call it that, but that was kind of like a common joke that you would have at district meeting or something like that, because let's be honest, like you might try to eat all healthy stuff. You might only eat from the members that knew your rules, but inevitably you're going to eat something that doesn't do your body good, even with as many prayers as you might offer. And other crazy foods, I think, people would eat guinea pigs there. I don't think I ever ate a guinea pig. I thought that was a little weird, but I never tried it, so I guess I can't say it's not good.